Hi everyone, Bob Mehsikomer here. It's 5 o'clock. Don't adjust those monitors. I am sunburned, torched, if you will. Hey, it was a great Muskie opener. We went up to Mille Lacs Lake and shared the water with a bunch of people up there. And when I say a bunch of people, I mean a bunch of people. So we had a good time. There were people that were catching fish. We weren't one of them, although Casey had a shot on one. On a Grim Reaper spinnerbait, and it kind of shocked her. It was kind of fun to watch it all happen. Hey, we've got a really, really exciting show lined up for you tonight. There is no doubt about it. I've got a very good friend of mine that's going to be with us here tonight, Scott Peterson. We're going to do a little due diligence here, and then we are going to get right into the meat of what's happening because it's electronics night right here tonight at 5 at 5 Live. So just right after this break, we'll be right back. Hi everyone, Bob Mehsikomer here. Don't let your lack of success be the death of your fishing. Check out Grim Reaper Lures, spinnerbaits, and bucktails. Call them at 610-593-2492 or look them up on the internet at grimreaperlures.com. Hi everyone, Bob Mehsikomer here. Hey, I got a question. What's the hottest thing in your boat during prime muskie conditions? If you're like me, it's Grant Big Dog Rods. Talk to the big dog himself. Call him at 847-577-0848. Hi everyone. Hey, welcome back to the show. Like I said, we're going to have some fun tonight, and I'll tell you why. The gentleman that's coming on the show with us tonight shared the radio with me on KFan for a long time. He's been a phenomenal stand-up angler. He fishes tournaments, fishes more tournaments than anybody I know, to be quite frank with you. Does very well in them, and for obvious reasons. We're going to bring him on to talk about electronics, the modern day technology that confuses at least me, maybe you. So if you would, let's just give one big, huge round of applause for Scott Peterson. Scott, welcome to tonight's show.
Thank you for having me, Bob.
Oh, my pleasure, young man. My pleasure for sure. All right, this is Scott's show tonight, folks. So he is going to literally be commanding me to go where he wants to go. Now, Scott has got a lot of material he's forwarded over to us. We've got it in the system ready to go. Scott's wound up. Scott, why don't you take the ball? It's yours. We'll interject. The lines are open. The comment section is open. If people comment, we can try to answer those questions and what have you on air. It's yours, Scotty.
Okay. When you look at fishing electronics, and I do this seminar a lot at times at sports shows, it's one of the most popular seminars that I give, is when you look at it, fishing electronics is probably one of the most understood pieces of equipment that everybody has on their boat, and sometimes not more, more than one or two units. And things have changed. Things have really changed in the last 5 years. In the freshwater market, with the first slide, you're going to see a 2D shot that we took out off of a Hummingbird unit. Chirp has been introduced to the freshwater market throughout pretty much all the companies that are giving you and delivering you electronics at this time. Could be Garmin, could be Ray Marine, will be Lowrance, will be Hummingbird. And all those things that are there, and you can see from the first snapshot that Chirp has really changed how you look at 2D. Everybody has grown up with 2D because that's all we had for many, many years until side imaging came on to the game about 10, 15 years ago, and down imaging followed that a little bit after. But the first shot we're looking at 2D sonar, and that is a shot that has Chirp in it. Now, what Chirp does, and we're going to have a slide a little bit farther in the presentation, is in traditional regular sonar, if you've got a pre-Chirp unit, we were sending down one frequency. And generally, majority of the manufacturers would grab that 200 kilohertz frequency, and they would send it down once. Okay, so it would go down, it would bounce off the bottom, and wait for it to come back. Well, with Chirp, we are fanning frequencies. And what it does is it gives you better target resolution, it shows you more detail, and you see a lot better picture than what you're seeing. As you can see the slide that's on there, you can see the group of walleyes that are sitting on top of that hump that I rolled over, and you can see, honestly, also the bait fish that are there that those fish are targeting. So that's what today's level of 2D sonar will allow you. You get people that say, oh, I want to see fish. That's a perfect example of rolling over the top of a hump and being able to see fish. And when you're using a Chirp unit, and in any manufacturer, that's pretty much what you're going to get. If you would advance to the next slide, Bob, we're going to look at now a side imaging Mega. And Hummingbird is the one that has got the Mega signal. Nobody else in the industry is using Mega currently right now. So the thing is, with Mega, it's licensed to Hummingbird, and what they've done is first generation side imaging came out at 455 kilohertz. And the secondary frequency that everybody was using is 800. Majority of the manufacturers are still using that. But Hummingbird found a little part that you could take that was a higher frequency signal in the megahertz range. And in the first year we introduced it with Mega, we had a limitation of being out to 125 feet. Well, you can see a lot of detail even out to 125 feet. But with Mega Plus that we've introduced 2 years ago, we've now doubled that range by increasing the power. So you're still in that 1200 megahertz range, but you're seeing when you look at clarity of a side imaging slide that's at 455 compared to what you see that is Mega, the detail is off the wall. The detail's off the wall. As you can see right here, you can see tires, you can see logs, you can see piles of rocks, individual piles of rocks, and everything else that is down there. You can see the individual beds. Honestly, it's to the point where you can see bluegill beds, and you can see in a good shot, if you honestly have bluegill sitting in those beds, it's got that much detail that you see there. And along with Mega Plus, if you will go to the third slide,
okay,
we've got a couple slides of what you're seeing of down imaging. And the down imaging part of it is, again, it is marriage with the side imaging, but you're getting high detail of what you're seeing in down imaging part. So a lot of times, if I'm rolling over a piece of structure and I'll go over and I'll find it with side imaging, and I'll drop a waypoint on that. When I make my second pass through that area, I will pull my range from about 100 feet, and I will pull it into about 60 feet. And I will go, and as I take my boat path, I will touch the side of that waypoint that I set down there. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm decreasing the distance that it goes out so that the screen gives me more detail. And one of the best ways to get full detail is shut off the side that's going to be the deep water side and just go to the single side. And a lot of times I will put that on the right-hand side of my boat. I will pass over that waypoint or by that waypoint off the right-hand side of my boat, and I will only leave the right-hand side screen showing on my unit. Then I'm using my whole display, whatever size unit you have, I'm using that whole display to show what is on that screen. And that's how you're going to get your highest detail. Now, with all manufacturers, if you take something that you see on that screen and run your cursor over and do that and then hit plus, it'll generally bring up a zoom box inside there. And in the Hummingbird world, you can blow that picture up 8 times. So you've got 2 times, 4 times, 6 times, and 8 times, and it'll blow up in that box. That also will give you another shot of what you're seeing with down imaging. Now, Bob, if you could move to the next slide.
Okay.
And truly what we're going to see here in the next one, guys, is a comparison with 2D sonar and down imaging. And I always say, not everybody has the money to be able to buy a side imaging unit, okay? So my recommendation when customers come into the booth or they talk to us at the sport shows, if you're not interested in side imaging, and not everybody's interested in side imaging, at least buy yourself a down imaging unit. That is the least that I would go. And here's what I call the litmus test all the time when you compare down imaging to 2D sonar. even with Chirp, you see a lot of higher detail, but you get a lot more information out of a down imaging picture compared to a 2D picture. Now, you still need 2D because 2D is your high-speed reading and allows you to see structure and everything else as you're going across the water, whatever speed that your boat will be. Now, one thing to point out here, side imaging and down imaging, honestly, is 10 miles an hour or less. Now, a lot of times, 99% of the times, I will just put my boat in gear and idle around as I'm charting stuff and looking at it. And you can go all the way up to 10 miles an hour. You can push that to be 3 or 4 miles an hour and still see good down imaging pictures and still see good side imaging pictures. And then when you want a better look, drop a waypoint on it, turn around and make a second pass. And again, adjust your screen. But you can see the picture here is that when you look at the 2D picture, I can see I've got a group of fish that are starting to separate off the top of that bottom. But when I go and I see higher detail when I go to the down imaging picture, I can see individual fish, and you can also see in the down imaging picture, you got more walleyes that are hugging the bottom, and you don't see them at all in the 2D picture. The detail that is in down imaging is twice the detail that you get in 2D imaging when you roll over schools of fish, and if you're specifically looking for fish. The down imaging picture is going to show you more detail than what the 2D will.
That stuff's amazing to me. Scotty, let's just we've got a block of photos that we've looked at right now. Let's go back, if you don't mind. I want to go back to number 2. Okay.
Okay.
Now, I have been told in the past, and I might be still corrected here, that you can change the color that you're looking at on the bottom. Some people prefer it green, some people prefer it gray, some people prefer it brown. Do you have a preference, and am I correct?
Yes, and you can change colors, and some of the colors honestly are off the wall, and they're hard to deal with or hard to see, but I agree. If I remember right, you have close to 8 or 9 different color palettes built into the Hummingbird, and I generally use the first 3. Blue is the first one. Amber, which is factory setting, is the one you're seeing on the screen now, and then there's a brighter amber. I will usually use number 2, amber, in bright sunlight because it shows up a little bit brighter. On cloudy days, I will use the blue because the blue makes the bottom pop a little bit more when you have a little bit darker environment that you're looking at it at. So on cloudy days, I will use blue, which is setting number 1. On bright sunny days, I will use amber 2, which is the current slide you're seeing, and then there's a brighter amber, which is setting number 3. That is one, if it's really, really bright sunlight out, and the direction that I am trying to go is when the sun is over my shoulder and directly showing on that screen, I may use that little bit of a brighter amber to get those pictures to snap a little bit more so I can see a little bit higher detail in them.
Yeah,
But you are correct. And that's one of the things to play with. Play with your color settings, and you may find out that you want a different color setting, and you can see it better. You know, not everybody can see the colors through the spectrum. And I get people sometimes that I'll use a blue screen, and they'll go, well, I can't see blue because I'm colorblind. Or I can't see a certain color because I'm colorblind. You've got multiple choices inside the screen choices, so go through there and see which ones you can see perfectly the best.
All righty.
That is a very good point, Bob.
Okay, great. We have a question here that's coming in from our comment section. Let's see if we can handle it. Here comes my question. Running the Hummingbird Hilux 10 Gen 2 D1 on the bow. Since it's not an SI, there's no jigging mode. That said, what's the best setting to deep drop on them in 2D with bait placement view?
The best thing to do is go into your sonar setting and make sure that you have it set at switch fire. Make sure that you have the filter set to off, and then play with the best color palette that you can. Because you have no jigging mode, and really what jigging mode is, what it does is it takes out, in a normal setting, in jigging mode, it takes one shot of side imaging, and then it takes multiple of 2D, it takes that one shot out of side imaging because it's saying that you don't care what's happening in the side imaging because you're concentrating more on 2D. Take the filter, and what the filter is, and what we did, and we built in what's called switch fire. And switch fire is built into the Hummingbird units is when it's on clear mode, it's the old Hummingbird setting where we filter the picture a little bit. We try to get some of the surface clutter out. We try to get some of that other setting out of there. We also will then, when it's in clear mode, it's filtered. When it's in switch fire mode or max mode, it took you back to where there's no filter to it. So you see a lot more stuff on the screen. And also too, you may have to turn the sensitivity up a little bit more to be able to see you lift that jig off the bottom. But again, you can do it if you're in max mode because there's no filter on it. It's giving you a clear shot, and it's going to show you the best picture that you can see.
Also, running a Gen 2 Solex 15 SI, when graphing bluffs, is there a way to determine fish and level of suspension?
You should be able to see those. Now, again, it's going to be a little bit tough. The best way that you're going to, and the question is, if you're seeing them in side imaging, you're going to see some of the shots that we did in 360. You have a hard time telling what level those fish are at, but you can see, and really what you're seeing is the shadows of the fish. You're going to have to try to figure out the areas and then try to go over them again. One thing you can try to do to see how high they are up off the bottom is try to go over it with down imaging. But again, because it's such a narrow beam that you're putting out with the down imaging picture, you're going to have a little bit of a problem trying to pick up that out. So you're going to have to just do more of a guessing game. And part of that's going to be, again, it's going to come with experience. But a lot of times more you're seeing shadows of the fish that are telling you, and the fish are still the white marks.
So it really is a lot of fine-tuning on all of this, which is very important.
It is.
One more question, Scotty. When it comes to the amount of sensitivity that you're applying to the unit itself, is there a lot of distortion if you get too much sensitivity or too little sensitivity? How do you determine where it's right or wrong?
Here's my deal on that. And I tell everybody in my seminar, go 2 or 3 plus or minus of factory setting of 10. Now, and I show them a slide inside of there where I turn the sensitivity up to 18 and 19. You're going to start to cloud up or distort your picture more than what you're going to see. So you'd need to go only 2 or 3 plus or minus of that 10 setting. So let me give you an example today. Let's say we want to go crappie fishing today, which is the perfect time. Everybody's out crappie fishing. So I'm going to take that sensitivity from 10 and I maybe run it up to 12 or 13. I am telling the unit I want to see more targets on the screen. Okay, I want to see smaller targets on the screen. Show me more of what you have. Okay, if I start to go up in the 15, 17, 18 range up to 20, I've now completely cluttered that picture up. Now, let's take the second part of that, and let's say we're going to go trophy walleye fishing in the fall. And I want to take that sensitivity setting, and that's at factory at 10, and I want to run it down to about 7 or 8. Now when I roll over the top of those rocks humps, when I start to see those arches that are there, or even the pictures that I showed you in the first place, you know that those are larger targets because you've turned the sensitivity down. You know those are the targets, those are the fish that you're looking for because those are the bigger fish that are on the schools. That's the detail of how you honestly run your sensitivity. When you go back to the starting page, there's a reason why the Hummingbird the factory guys, the engineers, or the Lowrance engineers, or the Garmin engineers, or whoever's unit yours running, there is a reason why those units are tuned to factory settings. The engineer that created that unit found out that that is the best starting setting for you to use. So do not push the envelope and go too far either side of that, because if you go too far, you're going to start to create more harm and distort your picture than what you're going to see clearly on your picture.
I see. On your slide number 4, You notice that you on the down image on the colored side of it, you've got all kinds of surface clutter. A lot of people look at that surface clutter and think it's a school of fish right below the surface, and it's in fact not, correct?
Correct. You know, a lot of that stuff is just that stuff that you see in the water that, especially now, you're getting a lot of stuff that's floating on the surface as the weeds start to grow and stuff comes off the bottom that happen. And again, it's just part of the stuff that's there. It's passing through that. You can turn the surface clutter down. I just 99% of the time I don't adjust it. You know what? I'm not paying attention to what's happening in that first foot or two, because again, I'm concentrating what's happening in that, and that's that slide at 45 feet. That's what I'm concentrating on. It's just a signal that it's just the stuff that's towards the south. It could be algae. It could be the floating stuff that's there that transducer is going through. That signal has to pass through to get down to what I want to see on the bottom, and that's truly all it is. Now, I mean, if you got fish up in the top, foot or two, it's gonna mix in there with the surface clutter. You may not see it.
Yeah.
But again, too, those may not or probably are not the fish that you're targeting, anyways.
That's where you're really focusing on the human side of it, where you have to analyze through your brain what's going on.
Yep.
I had another question real quick. We've got a viewer that's asking for one of his clients, what model is the best Hummingbird under $600 for a non-tech fisherman that would still be beneficial? And that's a very good question, because like I said in the beginning of this thing, these units can easily confuse somebody.
Oh, that is correct. And honestly, the best part for that would be probably a Helix 7. And again, he can get in that down imaging, I think, for $599. Side imaging is $799. It's an $800 unit. That is mega imaging. It's not mega plus. And partially, I think they're restricted of getting all the guts inside that housing. And that's the reason why you haven't seen 5 go to mega. I don't think there's enough room in the Helix 5 housing to be able to get it to do the mega imaging. And again, it's clarity and detail of what you're seeing. So I would say a down imaging 7 would be in that price range. And the other thing I'm going to say too is the 7 also starts the network capability of all the Hummingbird units. And the network capability is the question that I ask customers all the time when they come in and say, hey, I'm looking for a unit. My first question to them is, are you going to do Hummingbird Link? And what Hummingbird Link is when it talks to the Minn Kota trolling motor. And it does those added features of follow the contour, go waypoint to waypoint, do cruise control and all that. You get a lot of those functions in just regular iPilot. But to have to do follow the contour, it's got to be a Hummingbird network unit, because the Hummingbird unit has to talk to the trolling motor. And the network units in the 7 Helix, you can either purchase them as non-network units or network units, and it's $100 more to buy that network unit. And if that is your aspiration to do Hummingbird Link, you've got to have a network unit, and that starts at Helix 7.
Is the Mega 360 much better than the standard 360? I understand only Gen 3 will work on the Mega 360.
That is correct. In the Mega 360, we've got some slides coming up towards the end of this. It is night and day of what the first generation is. It's the same detail you're seeing from first generation side imaging to what you're seeing in Mega and Mega Plus side imaging and down imaging. It's that much detail.
Wow. All right, let's move on now to your slide number 5.
Okay.
That's an interesting slide for me.
So on slide number 5, you're going to see it as Mega DI Plus. That is a Gen 3 unit. Okay. And again, Plus designated 20 to 30% clear. We extended the range. You're back out to the 250 range from the 125. We doubled the power, so it extended the range reach back out. So again, in original side imaging, we had ranges out to 480 feet, and now you're getting close. You're back out to 450. And this is the detail that Mega Plus will show you. Perfect example, if you're going to go crappie fishing, you've got a shot that you've got a tree sitting down and you can see fish in the branches. And the caption that I put in the seminar that I have in my seminar is, now you know that fish can grow on trees. It's perfect.
yeah, it is.
It is, and honestly, the detail that is there. This is a shot that was probably taken down in Lake Eufaula. It's not one of my shots. It's one that I took from Hummingbird. And this is a shot that has a multiple schools of crappie sitting in a tree that has eventually broke off and now is sitting on the bottom of the lake. But you're seeing it is used by a couple schools of crappies that are there. And that is truly the detail that you're going to see with Mega Plus imaging. Mega and Mega Plus imaging, that's the detail you will see.
That is amazing. It really is. All right, moving on to your next slide. This is going to be totally different now. We're on 6.
And on 6, this is the first slide that you're going to see of Mega 360 for the person that asked the question about the detail that I'm going to see in Mega 360. A lot of times the stuff that you're seeing from Hummingbird comes through my boat at some time during the year. And a lot of times I test some of the stuff that we are doing, and a lot of it could be software imagery. It could be software versions. And sometimes, from time to time, it is new equipment. I was part of one of the pros that got to test 360 before we introduced it to the public in January. And what had happened is we did it very, very late in the season. As you can see, the water temp is 36.2 degrees. I did it on a metro lake. It had froze for like 4 or 5 days, and then it opened back up, and I was able to go out on that day, and it froze again a couple days later. This is on a metro area lake that you are seeing a group of fish. And again, you can see 1 to about 6 or 7 fish that are there that you're seeing that are in white, and you're seeing the shadows of those fish as we went by. This is an actual 360 in the test mode that we did when we did this back in November. And this is an actual shot that we shot on the Metro Lake. 360 is phenomenal. Now, the versions that you're seeing, and kind of it's a coin toss, because I get guys that come in and say, well, is a live picture better or is a 360 picture better? And again, I kind of favor 360, and not just because I'm with Hummingbird. I favor 360 because 360 gives you a full shot. Bob, if you would advance to the next slide, you'll see what I'm talking about here.
All right.
I can see where I have rock areas. I can see where I have hard bottom areas. And again, remember that you are standing over the top of that unit. And where those rock areas end up, or those fish that you're seeing right here, these fish that are seeing in this scan that you're seeing in the current slide before Bob switches it pretty quick, is those fish are right straight dead in front of the boat. You have one that maybe is at 1 o'clock, but the other fish are at the 12 o'clock position. If I'm standing over the top of this picture that you're currently seeing now, I can see exactly where those pieces of structure, where that hard bottom's at, because the hard bottom is detailed in the lighter area. I can see I have boulders in there in that part. I can line that up and say, okay, I've got boulders out in front of me at the 1 o'clock position. I got boulders out in front of me at the noon position. I got boulders out at the 11 o'clock position. I can stand over that and see the detail, and then I know I have a direction of where I can cast. So if you take that and go down a weed line, and you see the corner of the weed line, and it's the inside corner as it turns and swings out to a point, and you may have rocks on the end of that point, I can see that weed line, and I'm just going to give you a time. Let's say that weed line and the positioning on it is at the 2 o'clock position, so I stand over the top of that unit and imagine where the 2 o'clock position is. Now I can fire a cast right in the corner of that inside corner of that turn there. Now I know that the rocks are sitting out in the 11 o'clock position or 12 o'clock position right out in front of me on the end of that point. I am more of a detailed angler to where if you can show me structure, I can start to figure out, or by knowledge of my fishing, I can figure out where the best place for those fish to be sitting at. And those are the places that I will target. And when you use 360, it fully displays that as it's all right in front of you and gives you an indication of what direction it is that you need to make your cast as you go. Because you're seeing it right down in front of you, and you can line standing over the top of that unit, you can line up your cast according to how it's positioned on the screen and be able to to put your cast right out in the areas that they need to be. That's why I preference the using 360. And I have one more comment to make here. I've talked to a lot of the guys. I know a lot of the pros that are using Garmin Live. They did the initial testing with it. And part of the things, and I said, I asked them, one of them, I said, be honest with me. How difficult is it of a unit to run? And they said, you know what, it takes a pretty good level of having electronics knowledge to be able to run this unit accurately and truly see where those fish are at. But he says once you've figured it out, he said it is an immense advantage for you to use those units. And again, I'm kind of still in that 360 park. I can stand over the top of that unit and fire that cast to that position that I need it to be. So I don't think if you're going to go wrong with either version, but I am going to forewarn you a little bit. 360 will be easier to use because it's, again, you can see it on the screen, you can stand over the top of it, cast to the direction where you need to go. Like I said, the guys that I asked about the Live unit or Lowrance Live or Garmin Live or whatever you want to do, they say it's a lot more harder unit to be able to operate. And I don't remember who it was. I was at one of the sports shows. I don't remember who it was. It was Scott Martin,
okay.
Roland Martin. He says, you know what? I have a hard time seeing it. He says, I cannot understand it. But he said, Scott has got it so dialed in. He can stand and look at that screen and said, Dad, there's a fish at 11 o'clock. Cast to 11 o'clock. And Roland said he would, and he'd hook that fish. But Roland says with him looking at that screen, he says, I have a hard time figuring out what that detail was.
Looking at the 360, how much difference is there if I'm in how much effectively is the difference when I'm in shallow water as opposed to deep water? What's happening to the image?
The image, the accuracy of the detail of the image is going to stay the same. The thing is that a lot of times in shallower water, you're going to see you may be in the weeds, and it excels when you're outside the weeds, where you can tell every little turn, every little niche that's out there. If you get in too shallow, you're going to find that, the weeds are going to knock the signal down. And truly it's made for more of, again, I can see fish above the weeds, as you saw the fish in the first shot that we showed you. I can see fish above the weeds. I can tell the clock position of where they're at that I can cast to them. But it honestly excels when you get in deeper water because you're going to see more detail because that signal has more of an area to cover.
All righty. Hey, folks, let's take a little commercial break right now. Give Scotty a chance to get a drink and catch his breath. And we'll prepare ourselves for what's coming next. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hi, everyone. Bob Mehsikomer here. Hey, I got a question. What's the hottest thing in your boat during prime muskie conditions? If you're like me, it's Grant Big Dog Rods. Talk to the big dog himself. Call him at 847-577-0848. Don't let your lack of success be the death of your fishing. Check out Grim Reaper Lures, spinnerbaits, and bucktails. Call them at 610-593-2492 or look them up on the internet at grimreaperlures.com. Alrighty, we're coming back into the show right now. Scotty has got some slides. Scotty, we've got a transducer in the bottom of the boat. Talk to me, young man.
Okay. You know what? You've just spent $3,000 put your new electronics on your boat. And here's one of my things that I tell in my seminar all the time. There are guys that are capable of installing units. There are guys that are not capable of installing units. Please do not waste your money if you do not have the common knowledge, or I can't say common knowledge. You may not have the knowledge or may not be good at it. Please, transducer installation is the key to the whole thing. You could have the best, you could put the money out for the best unit, and if your transducer is not installed correctly, you're not going to get the detail out of your unit. And here's the thing that I get a lot of people tell them. If I am running a fiberglass situation, hands down, I will have the transducer glassed in the hull because you get a solid reading, you get a good clear reading through start to finish. When you start putting transducers outside, that's where you start to run into problems. This is a shot, just a simple shot of a glassed-in transducer in a fiberglass boat. hands down, I will have that high-speed transducer glassed in the boat. Now, if you go to the next slide, Bob, when you're talking down imaging and side imaging, that transducer, we've tested it, we've played with it. You can try to get by with putting it inside the boat, but you're not going to get any detail out of it. That's why it needs to be put out. And when you look at the slide of where the location of the transducer is, honestly, on high-performance bass boats, in my opinion, you want to protect this transducer. It's a $450, $500 investment that you made in that transducer. In the early years, we would have said put it down right down there. Currently, if it was me, I would put it up on what I call the shelf, and the shelf is what I'm saying is what's above that. And the reason why is because we go back to that setting of you are 10 miles an hour or less. You are not going to be on pad when you're looking at side or down imaging. So the thing is, if I put that up on what I call the shelf, okay, you're going to protect that transducer. It's not going to be somewhere where you get into, especially if you're fishing down south or fishing up here that's got timber in the water, where you can tear that off, or get to a point where you get into rocks where you can tear that off or scratch the surface of it to where it won't work or show you as much detail. If you put it up on the shelf, you are going to be far better, more protecting it. And it, again, when it's running across the water, it's going to be out of the water or somewhat just splashed with water. But when it's down, when you are going your 10 miles an hour or less, it's going to be down in the water where it needs to be. Now, an interesting thing that I will tell you is I'm running a Bass Cat Lynx, and my side imaging transducers are mounted to my jack plate. They're mounted to the bottom of my jack plate.
Oh, really?
So, I mean, that's how far up I've got them off the bottom. And they're far enough that you get the angle, you get clear readings. I've got a helix mounted on the left side, and I got a Solix one mounted on the right side. And again, that's how far up they are. So if you take them and mount them on that shelf, what I keep calling that shelf, that second step, where that that transom levels back out again, that's the perfect place for them. When you're going across the water at high speeds, they're out of the water, they're protected, you're never going to rip it off. But then again, when you are off plane, those transducers are going to be in the water in the spot where they need to be. Those are typical fiberglass settings. When you get into aluminum, you're going to get in a total different situation, and that's the next set of slides we're going to start to look at.
Alrighty, yeah, I can see it's a totally different deal. So that Allison cut at the back of the boat, you'll take it that high because you're going slow to start with, so it's irrelevant. How about cavitation? Do you get any cavitation at slow speeds in that Allison?
No. And the thing is too is you can see right there that is also pretty close, or I bet you he's tilted that up a little bit. When you look at that slide again of the side imaging transducer, it's pretty close to that bunk. And again, it looks like it's tilted up a little bit where it's not level. And here's the thing, too, you want to do, is you want to set a level when you are rigging these. If you're the one that's rigging it, when your boat is on the trailer, set a level on the tongue of your trailer and make sure your boat is level, that tongue is level. Then hopefully the rest of that trailer will be level and that boat will be sitting level on that. Take and then also put a level on that transducer and make sure that transducer is level. Okay? If you can look at that picture that Bob's currently put back up again, you look at that side imaging transducer, and that side imaging transducer, the back end of that transducer is up a little bit. It's not level. So you are taking away from some of that picture quality that is there. And again, when you mount it again on that, like Bob said, the Allison shelf, you want to make sure that transducer is level, especially with the side imaging. Now, if you would advance back now, Bob, to the next slide, we're going to talk about aluminum. And this is where I ask people in my seminar, and I can ask you, on an aluminum boat, I always ask people, okay, who has a reading when they're sitting still, and then now they go to get up on plane, and they start to lose their reading, and they slow back down, and they come back, and the reading comes back. And the ones that raise their hands, I said, your transducer is installed wrong. Okay? It's that simple. It is hard to install transducers, especially on aluminum. You may not get it the first time. You may take you 4 or 5 times settings. You also have a speed limitation. For 25 years before I went to Basscat, I was with Lund. And honestly, about the highest speed reading I could get a reading at was about 53 miles an hour on aluminum hull. And again, you get over that point, and there's just so much cavitation that comes off the bottom of that hull with the rails that they have, the strikes that they have in there, and the rivets and everything else. It's hard to to keep a solid reading for high speed when you're using an aluminum hull. Here's also the other thing that some of the dealers are doing. I have a buddy that got a boat from a local dealer. Now, if you look at this, you got 2 high-speed transducers on there. The first one, on the bottom one, the one on the right, the dealer installed the side imaging, which has to be the lower of the 2, because if you put the high-speed next to it and mount it lower, you're going to start to block the side imaging picture as that passes by. You've got to, in aluminum application, put the high-speed transducers on one side and the side imaging transducer on the other. And the reason I say that is because the side imaging has to have a clear shot. So when you look at that picture that you currently see, that's got to be the bottom transducer. And then you suffer when you cannot keep enough water going across the face of that transducer on the high speed. And you're not going to be able to probably keep the picture past 30, 40 miles an hour. Where if you put the high-speed transducers on one side and the side imaging transducer on the other, and use rig right boards because that's the easiest way to do it. You're only drilling 2 holes in the boat, and then it's the safest way to do it. You can get those transducers dialed in that you can keep a reading up to 52 or 53 miles an hour on an aluminum, and that's about the best you're ever going to get.
Yeah, because aluminum does create a bunch of turbulence down there with rivets and scratches and nicks, and it's not like
exactly.
a gel
boat.
And
the thing is, again, too, guys, you can mount the side imaging transducer. It doesn't have to be level with the bottom of the boat. Run it up a little bit higher. Get it off the bottom of the boat. Get it up. Protect it a little bit. It doesn't have to be even with the bottom of the boat. Not like the high speed has to be, where it sits a little bit below the bottom of the boat. And here's the other thing is when you start, here's how I generally start and line up. You've got a line that's in the middle of that transducer on the side. Okay, it goes all the way around. I set a yardstick, and where that line is where I start. That's my first setting. Then here's the key. Here's the key of I could probably say the number one error that everybody does. Drill those holes in the middle of those slots, because I can either move it up from there or down from there. And chances are you're going to be moving it lower. You're not going to be moving it up. You're going to be moving it lower. And here's where you get into what I call the necessary evil of the 2. You cannot keep constant bottom reading, but you're starting to throw a rooster tail. Either you lower it and the rooster tail gets worse and your reading gets better, or you leave it where it's at or move it up a little bit to keep the rooster tail from splashing all over your motor. There are now manufacturers that are making little splash covers that are keeping the rooster tails down, allowing you to adjust it lower. But here's the thing is you can see, and this is a no-no, as you can see in this picture, and the reason I use this picture is I had these transducers set so low that I kept popping them out of the pop-up brackets.
Oh,
so what did I do? I put a screw in the middle of the bracket so it wouldn't trip up on me. The one on the bottom, when I was fishing a tournament up on Gull Lake, I ripped it completely off.
Ooh.
It was going across the water, and it was a pretty rough day, and I opened up that Lund and hit her, and I was going, and about halfway across Gull in the Big Bay, all of a sudden I lost my 2D reading. Well, when I got to the channel, looked at it, all I had left was the cord. I had ripped the transducer off. So again, don't screw those, don't lock them down like that. If you're going to have to pick the necessary evil either and get the best picture dialed in that you possibly can, and then mark it there and see where it's at.
We have a question. On aluminum boats, does it matter if the transducer is on the starboard or port side of the boat?
You know, they say starboard, but I've tried it in both locations, and I never got, and I mean I was diligent at it. I moved it around. I took on the job one year of saying, you know what, I'm going to get this dialed in, and I'm going to get it dialed in to the best that I could possibly get it to. And it didn't matter which side I put it on. The reading didn't get any better. The reading didn't get any worse. And again, like I said, about 53 was the highest I could get it at. And that's just the beast. That's just the beast that is called aluminum. That's what it is.
All right, we have another question before we move on to your next slide with transducers. And I run a twin Solex on the console, twin Hilux on the front or the bow. Excuse me. Let's see here. It's switched on me. He's got too many questions coming in here. On the bow, I'm GPS pucked front and back. I also run the Ultrex TM with 360. Is Hummingbird going to come out with a single Ethernet hub to accommodate all, since current is 5 ports, keeping me from getting another hub? I'm telling you, I'm confused.
Okay, I run Solex on the console, twin helix on the bow.
Yeah.
I'm GPS pucked front and back, okay, which is, and you really want it. Well, here's the thing. If you're running the GPS pucks, you're probably using it for the heading sensor. Head that to put that in your mapping unit, whatever you're using as mapping, and I'm thinking you're pretty much running the same system I am. You're using Solex, I would say, for your electronics, your bottom pictures and everything else, and I'm using Helix for mapping and using Helix as a standby. I also run Ultrex trolling motor with 360. Is Hummingbird going to come up with a single Ethernet hub to accommodate all, since current is 5 port? Okay. With Ultrex, he must not be running Mega 360, so he has to use one of his Ethernet ports for the 360, because now it's a transducer connection instead of an Ethernet connection. The only thing you can do is, if you're going to try to expand that anymore, you're going to have to add another Ethernet. There's no way of getting around it. And like I said, I would make sure the heading sensors are going to be going into the unit. Now, when he's using 360, the heading sensor has to go into what unit he's using. Okay, so if he's using his Solex as his main side imaging and down imaging unit, the heading sensor is going to have to go there. And then in the mapping, he's just going to have to use the built-in the pucks. And here's the thing that
he popped in and said, "No, I'm not."
No, I'm not?
Yeah.
So then why is he so is he, what's the deal with, what's he using the pucks for then? Because honestly, when I tested the pucks compared to the built-in antennas, I didn't see any difference. But when you're running 360, or if you want heading sensor all the time to where the boat doesn't go back to the circle after 0.5 miles an hour or below, that's the only difference between the heading sensor. The heading sensor keeps the boat position on the screen all the time if you're moving or not. That's the advantage of the heading sensor.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do for him right now.
Have him email me, and I'll correspond with him directly.
Yep, I put up your contact information, your phone, your email, and your Facebook information is currently on the screen, so he can certainly do that.
Now, a couple questions up from that one, Bob. I noticed in the break, the gentleman was asking, is Hummingbird going to come up with a live version just like Garmin had? Hummingbird is working on something, and I am not positive when it's going to be introduced.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So I have a question for you, real quick. Can I have your old units? All right, let's go back and take a look at the next slide. It will be number 11. It's transducer orientated again. It's on aluminum boat, and Scotty, take it away.
And again, and this is the second slide where we had the high-speed transducers on one, and we stuck the side imaging transducer on the opposite side. Okay, again, I'm separated them because I can adjust the level of the side. If I put them side by side, I've got to keep the side imaging transducer lower to be able to get a perfect reading. And if I would mount the high speed above it, I would get it. But again, I'm going to have a hard time keeping that high speed reading when I get into the higher. So honestly, if you go to the next one, Bob.
Yeah, we're going to it with transducers coming down. Okay.
Yep. So this is where we get into, like I kind of mentioned before, where we have traditional sonar compared to Chirp. And this is just a simple diagram of you're seeing the transducer diagram, and the one on the left is going to be what old conventional sonar was. We were sending out a single frequency at 200 kilohertz. And you had one signal go down so that the unit would send down that one signal, and then it would receive it back. But Chirp technology sends out multiple frequencies. If you look at those slides in regular 2D sonar, you are going from about 150 kilohertz to 220 kilohertz. It's taking every other frequency and fanning those, and it fans it so fast that you'll never notice it. But in the Chirp, it makes a difference. It's like night and day from the old 2D pictures that you would see compared to today's 2D picture. You're seeing the details that I showed you, where you could see the school of walleyes. You get better target resolution. You get incredible fish detail, and also better detail and vertical presentation if you are a drop shotter. If you want to do vertical with a jig and wrap, if you do any of that, you definitely want to make sure that you are running a Chirp sonar unit, because you're going to see all that detail that you're getting. And it's all because of sending multiple frequencies down. As different parts of the water level and different levels, there is a frequency that will work better than another one. And because it's fanning it, you get the detail that you're seeing in the picture, and it's like night and day compared to what old sonar is.
All right.
Okay? And for one more thing, people ask me all the time, what does Chirp mean? And it is compressed high-intensity radar pulse.
Oh, okay. I would have that question myself. All right, you got a map here for us.
I think when you look at it, and again, I think there's things that Hummingbird does that is far above everybody else that's out there in the industry. Mega side imaging and down imaging is one. Link is another. Lake Master is strides above everybody else when you look at detailed mapping. And part of that key is also of being able to look at a map and say, you know what, this has so much detail. I can honestly look at a map and say, you know what, I can tell where some of these fish should be positioned before I even get on the water. And to be able to do what I can do when I have Lake Master and Hummingbird as a combination, you can see I can take certain areas and put them in red. I know not to go across those. I generally set them at 6 feet or shallower. I can also do water depth highlight to where if I'm looking at a weed line or I'm looking at a transition area at 25 feet, if I set that at 25 feet, I can see where all those 25-foot transitions areas on that map, just as you see as the current slide, because I can highlight them in chartreuse. I can see them. They stand out. They're easier to follow. I can do that same thing if I'm trying to troll a contour and I don't have link. I can highlight them. I can do it if I'm bass fishing on a weed line. Weed line's at 18 feet. I can highlight that 18-foot mark, and it's easier just to hold that boat in that deal and go down here and see every little turn or every little direction where it goes before I even get upon it, so I can adjust to make sure that I'm staying at that contour. I can do that with Hummingbird and Hummingbird Lake Master charts.
Now,
and again, I feel they're a step above everybody else that's out there.
Question. I've got Lowrance on my Legend, and I have to have 2 chips in order to have navigation. Can you put 1 chip in it in your system and use it on both units?
In Solix you can, in Helix you cannot.
Okay.
Solix will share mapping. Helix does not.
Okay.
So if I'm running Helix units, I have to have a mat chip for each unit.
Okay. Hey, folks, I'm telling you right now, Scotty Peterson has got more knowledge. Like I said in the prelim to the show, he has got more knowledge than anybody I know. In fact, he's probably forgotten more about electronics than I will ever know. I am going to have an open invitation to bring Scotty back. Let's fill up that comments list. Scotty's going to answer those comments. He's going to follow the feed for a little while, maybe a day or two. If you have a question, pop it in there. He'll take care of it. We're getting very, very close to having to get out of here right now. But that being said, Scott, I want to say with the widest amount of respect I can for you, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for sharing with us. And I would love to get on the boat and shoot some video of all of this and take it to the next level. What do you think?
Yeah, we can do it.
Man, I'm telling you. Hey, folks, give this man a big round of applause. Scott Peterson, folks. I'll put his address and everything up for you again, just so everybody has it. We'll have it in the end of the show here coming up. Scott Peterson, his phone number's up, his email address is up, his Facebook presence is there. Follow this man. I'm telling you, flat out, follow him, because you will learn a lot from Scotty. Thank you very much. We're going to go to the last commercial of the show, and we're going to sign off for the rest of the night. Scotty, let's get on the water someday, huh?
Thank you, sir.
Alrighty.
Thank you for having me tonight.
My pleasure, Scott. My pleasure. Folks, with that being said, like I said, we're going to pull out of this thing. We've got sponsors who make it all possible for us, and I would like to just, in closing, say enjoy this. And we'll see you next week for more 5 at 5 Live. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed tonight's show. Bye-bye. Hi, everyone. Bob Mehsikomer here. I got a question. What's the hottest thing in your boat during prime muskie conditions? If you're like me, it's Grant Big Dog Rods. Talk to the big dog himself. Call him at 847-577-0848. Don't let your lack of success be the death of your fishing. Check out Grim Reaper Lures, spinnerbaits, and bucktails. Call them at 610-593-2492 or look them up on the internet at grimreaperlures.com.